You can see why it's a little tough to keep our house from getting all dusty. I show you this picture just because I think this might be sort of a little window into your brain right now. As we're learning Greek and all this new stuff is coming at you, I know that it's quite overwhelming. It can be like very challenging to learn Greek. And I want to encourage you to press on. Here's what's happening in your brain right now. It's growing. It's growing, it's getting bigger, it's getting better. You see, when you go down those same old ruts of thinking that you're used to, the comfortable ruts, well, it's comfortable, but you don't grow. It's when you stress yourself a little, you know, no pain, no gain. It's when you stress yourself a little that you really begin to strengthen yourself, strengthen your brain. Your brain, after all, is a muscle. So I want to encourage you to press on. Now, Dr. Mounts has a great analogy. He calls it the fog. And the idea is that as we learn new things, we have this feeling of being lost. But if we'll press through that, kind of press through the pain, right? Press through the suffering, as you look back, things start to clear up. I think you'll experience that to be true. If you go back and look at some previous lessons, now you'll go back and go, wow, I get that now. But at the time, it seemed so difficult. See, that's the fog, okay? So let's press on. So today we look at the demonstrative pronouns and the reflexive pronouns, and then we're finished with substantives. We have been looking at this beautiful chart now for 14 lessons, believe it or not. And I hope that as we're doing this, you're starting to see the patterns. That nouns will follow first declension, or second declension, or third declension. So nouns change in certain patterns, right? The article has to be able to be masculine and feminine and neuter, and it follows a 2-1-2 pattern of change. And when we look at pronouns, we see all these forms, but I want to point out we have only looked at 11 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Actually, today we look at these final 5 boxes, but don't think, oh no, all this new stuff to learn. There's actually very little new to learn. We're just learning, if you want to think about it this way, we're just learning 5 words in this lesson. Because you see, once you understand how Greek substantives change form to show their case number and gender, you understand Greek substantives. So the morphology really is not that difficult once you begin to see the patterns. And again, there aren't thousands of patterns. There are just these 3. Let's zoom in and look at the near demonstrative pronoun, which in English will be this and these, and the far demonstrative pronoun, which in English will be that and those. But first, let me try to explain these words to you, what they are. So let's talk about demonstrative pronouns. In English, the demonstrative pronouns are this and these, that and those. This and these are the near demonstratives, that and those are the far demonstratives. So let me illustrate this for you. This is Hallie. So this is a near demonstrative. She's right here in my lap. And it's singular, right? So it's this. These would be an example of the plural form of the near demonstrative. I have the dogs in my lap, and you can see there's more than one, and they're excited because they're being fed, and so I would refer to, come here dog, I would refer to these. Do you see that's the plural form? And they're really enjoying my lap here. These dogs. Do you see that's the near demonstrative? They're right here. And it's plural. So this and these are the near demonstrative pronouns. Now a far demonstrative would be referring to that, right? Okay, the itchy dog. That dog. You see, he's not in my lap, he's far away. That dog. So that is the singular far demonstrative. But if I want to talk about more than one, I use the far demonstrative, those. So that would be singular, those would be plural. Those dogs really like chicken. So that is the far demonstrative singular, those is the far demonstrative plural. So in English, pretty simple, right? This and these is near demonstrative, that and those is far demonstrative. But now we flip to Greek, and oh, here we go again. 24 forms of these. But that doesn't freak us out anymore, right? Because we understand what's going on. Each of these pronouns tells us its case, number, and gender. That's why we need to have all of these forms. Greek gives us a lot more information per substantive than English does. And the good news is that it gives us this information in very predictable ways. So here we see the beautiful 2-1-2 pattern again. So let's glory in these beautiful forms here of the near and far demonstratives. Now, if you just look at these together, well, the far demonstratives are pretty easy to pick out. They always start with some form of ekane, don't they? The near demonstratives almost always start with tu or tau, except in the nominative where in the masculine and feminine they start with who and how, okay? And in the plural, same thing, who and how. But really, these are pretty easy to pick out, and the endings are just so familiar to us right by now that this is almost too easy. Can you see how the endings from our 2-1-2 pattern are being put on? Hutas, tutu, tuto, tuton. Hutoi, tuton, tutois, tutus. Move it over there. Okay, so piece of cake, right? Now look at the feminine forms. Same kind of thing. We have haute, tautes, taute, tautain, hautai, tuton, tautais, tautas. And then the neuter forms, pretty consistent too. Tuta. Now we've seen with the neuter singular, sometimes it ends with just the omicron, sometimes omicron noum, no problem. Tuta, tutu, tuto, tuta. Nominative and accusative, always the same. And then tauta, tuton, tutois, tauta. So you can see how the endings are being applied, and that pattern by now for us is super, super duper easy, right? And then in the far demonstratives, it's extremely regular. We just have ekane, and then os, u, o, on, oi, on, ois, us, right? And then in the feminine, a, ace, a, ain, I, on, ice, os. In the neuter, a, u, o, on, a, on, ois, a. Exactly the 2-1-2 endings. So yes, okay, yeah, wow, yikes, 2 new charts and we're terrified and all of that, but no, we're not terrified. We're not terrified at all. This is a piece of cake. It's just 2 words which follow the 2-1-2 pattern. And they give us in beautiful form all this glorious information about every substantive. Now let's scroll our way down through John 1 and look at a few of these in the wild, okay? So here we have hutas ein in arche proston theon. This one, so lots of times we've seen this in Greek when the subject is thought to be obvious, they don't express it. So this is being used in a substantival way. This one was in the beginning with God, but notice hutas is the nominative singular masculine form of this. Okay, scrolling on down, we see it again in verse 7. Hutas eilthen eis martyrion. This one came for a witness. In this case, we're talking about John the Baptist, so we would supply this man. Look at verse 8. Uk ein ekenos ta phos. Not he was that one. You see it? Far demonstrative, ekenos, and our nominative singular masculine form. Uk ein ekenos ta phos. That one was not the light, so that's the far demonstrative. Scrolling on down, we see it again. This is he of whom I said, hutas ein hon epon. And again, Greek not giving us all the words we want in English, but we'll get used to that as we go along. How about this one? It's interesting. Kai haute estin he martyria. This is the testimony. Why haute? Why feminine? Because it's referring to the testimony. This is that. And just for added bonus points, do you remember what it is when you have a to be verb connecting 2 things? Predicate nominative, right? Haute estin he martyria, both in the nominative case. Both both nominative, singular, feminine. All right, it's making sense, right? This and that, this and that, this and that. Any more? Here we go. Tauta in Bethania agenata. These things in Bethany came to be. Tauta, neuter, plural, right? And in this case, it's subject of the sentence, so this would be nominative form. Remember, the forms of the nominative and accusative and the neuter are always the same. But Greek, when it wants to refer generally to something, a concept, almost always uses the neuter. So we just supply the word things. These, literally, like these in Bethany came to be. Tauta. So nominative, neuter, plural there. Here we go again. This is the one of whom, etc. Here we have a demonstrative with a preposition, dia, with the accusative here, dia tuta, for this reason. Okay, so remember the prepositions, really important to notice. How about this one in verse 33? In water, ekenos moi apon. Okay, apon. Or let's back up a little and read. All ha pimsas me, the one who sent me, baptizein, to baptize, in hudati, in water, that one, ekenos. Okay, there it is, ekane. That and those. Remember, this is singular, so it's that. Singular form, that one. That one because nominative, masculine, singular. Okay, and here we have, again, hutas, this one. Because this one, we see it again, so no tricks there. Just about through here. Oh, here we have emenon, they stayed that day. Tain hemeron ekanein, that day. Ekane, referring back to the day. So this is this would be accusative, singular, feminine, right? And that article gives it away. And we have a word order that we wouldn't expect in English, right? We have article, noun, modifier. We would say that day, the day that. We wouldn't say it that way, but this is a Greek way of expressing it. The day, which day? That day. Tain hemeron ekanein. Again, though, a far demonstrative pronoun, that day. Okay. And here we go again. Hutas, can you see the... Hutas is pretty common. He finds Hutas. He found him. And then I think there's just one more here that we'll look at. Mezzo tutone, sorry. Mezzo tutone, greater than these. Mezzo requires this genitive form here, is why that's the way it is. But greater than these, you will see. Tutone, notice plural, so it's these. We don't know gender, but probably it's things, so we would assume that it's neuter. So are you getting it? This and these, that, and those, they're not nearly as common as you can see scrolling through as some of the other pronouns, but you can see that there are enough of them that you need to recognize them, because they will pop up here and there. All right, so let's finish up our pronouns strong with the first person reflexive. That would be myself. The second person reflexive, that would be yourself. And the third person reflexive, himself. But before we look at the Greek forms, let's again look at the meaning of these. The reflexive pronoun reflects back and always involves in English some form of self. So I sit here now, me, myself, and I. Myself is the first person reflexive pronoun. Now I include buddy in the mix here, and now I can talk about the plural form of the first person reflexive pronoun. I would say ourselves. We ourselves love feeding time. Now the second person reflexive pronoun would be yourself, speaking to someone else. You, yourself. So you see it's reflexive, it's second person, yourself. Now if I had two of them, I might speak to them plural, and it's the same in English almost. I would say yourselves. So that's the second person plural form of the reflexive pronoun, yourselves. Now, the third person reflexive pronoun would be like the dog itself, or himself, or herself. We've seen this before, how the third person pronoun in English has gender. So it would be himself, herself, or itself. But speaking of just one individual, right? But now the plural form of the third person would be themselves. Themselves, we lose gender. But we have plural, and it's reflexive. The dogs themselves love eating chicken.
Ah, the end of the road. What a glorious sight. The reflexive pronouns. Some form of myself. Myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself. And then we have our plural forms. You'll notice that I didn't put the plural forms in the first and second person. There are plural forms. I ran out of room. That's why. But now let's look at these forms. The myselfs are auto, auto, auton. Now you go like, wait a minute, where's the nominative? Well, think about it a minute. Reflexive pronouns, by their very nature, receive the action of the verb. So we don't need any nominative forms of the reflexive pronouns. It would be like a contradiction of reality. Okay, so no need for nominative forms. But, okay, oo, o, on. And if we had the plural forms, of course, they would be own, ois, us, right? So auton, autois, autus. Okay, so I just didn't put them because I ran out of space, but you get it, right? Okay, and then we have our feminine form, autes, aute, autain. Are you recognizing this autes? Looks just like the third person pronoun, doesn't it? With im on the front. That's the first person form. I think of it as sort of a backwards me, me, you know. But anyway, that's of myself. If you go to the second person form, se autu, se auto, se auton. And of course, if we had our plural forms, it would be se auton, se autois, se autus. And our feminines here, se autes, se aute, se autain. But the se, do you get it? That's what to see. We know this word, autes, and this is just autes with me on the front or you on the front, or for the third person, he autu, he auto, he auton. And I did go ahead and put the plural here, so you can see what that would look like. He auton, he autois, he autus. So the forms are really, so logical and simple that really the only thing to learn here is that first person is em, second person is se, third person is he. The reflexive pronouns are not a big deal. They're easy to recognize, and there aren't that many of them. Only one in John chapter 1. Here we have this sentence, te leges peri se autu. See the se there? Se is the your, right? So yourself. The case here, the genitive, is being determined by the preposition. Peri with the genitive means concerning. What do you say concerning yourself? Here is an example of the first person reflexive pronoun. Therefore, I did not consider myself worthy. That's how we would smooth this out. Ude emauton exiosa. So I did not consider myself worthy. Just focus now on the auton. So myself. It's first person reflexive pronoun. And just one example of a third person reflexive pronoun. This is elegan gar in haute. She was saying in herself. This is about the woman who wanted to touch Jesus, and so Matthew's telling us here, she kept saying to herself, but herself, he aute. So do you see that there? He is the third person form, so herself. You see that it's feminine by the ending there.
So there you have it. We have spent 5 lessons now looking at 11 words. Why so much focus on these 11 words? 2 reasons. The first one is that these words are very common, especially the first, second, and third person pronouns. They're everywhere, so we have to understand them. But more importantly, if you understand how these words change form, then you will understand how all Greek substantives change form. because they all follow these simple patterns. First, second, or third declension. And then our adjectives can be 2-1-2 or 3-1-3 or 2-2 or 3-3. Now most of them, as we've seen with the pronouns, are just 2-1-2. So I know it looks like a lot, but it's really not. Once you understand these patterns, you understand Greek substantives, which all, remember now, have case, number, and gender, and they just change their forms a little bit. They morph to show you these things. But the morphing is very regular, very predictable, and so once you begin to see these patterns, and remember there aren't thousands of them, there are just a few. Once you begin to understand these patterns, Greek just starts to pop for you. So I hope it's popping for you. I hope it's not exploding for you. Hopefully that's not you. But if it is, don't give up. Press on through. The fog will clear, I promise you, if you don't give up.